when you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Do you want to tell me your name again? That way I don't have to get it out of the other one.
Yeah, sure. My name's Mike Fallek.
And Alan talking about movies. They may be best friends, but they always disagree.
Mike Fallek.
And Alan, I seen that.
I run Let's Start a Cult podcast, and I'll be creating a series of comedy series for Soundbite, Soundbyte, the app, this September.
Cool. And we did a podcast, which came out 2 weeks ago now. But this time, I think you have a movie, right?
I have the movie for you.
All right.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Trivia number 1. Despite this movie being widely considered now a classic, it was universally almost panned when it came out. The most positive review it got was from the New York Times saying, this is a paraphrase of it, I don't understand the movie, but it seems as though it might be brilliant.
I want to say like a 2001 Space Odyssey.
Nailed it in one!
Is that right?
Yeah, do you want to hear the other two?
Sure.
Despite this filmmaker making many movies based on books, this was one of the few movies that has ever been made where a book was written at the same time as the movie, meant to be consumed as one piece of media. And then the third one was this movie features real leopards. Okay.
So I've never seen this. So I'm not going to have a lot to say about it, unfortunately. I know Interstellar is somewhat loosely based off of it, right?
Well, Interstellar is based off of it in its visual effects, which is very strange. What Interstellar uses is the idea that there are universal time slips in the universe. So, which is a really high concept sci-fi thing to latch onto. So essentially in 2001, the idea is that, there's a gate is opened up on, one of the moons of Saturn, and, there's this expedition to go see it. And there's all this other plot stuff that happens that's sort of in the way of that statement, which is that there's a gap in the universe, in the time, space continuum has opened up on the moon of Saturn. And then, so the robot stuff is what people latch onto. Interstellar has latched onto both the visual effects, which is, there's a very iconic scene where there's sort of a refractory lens running all these lights past it in, 2001, which becomes the main theme of time travel in Interstellar.
Okay.
And you saw Interstellar though?
Yes.
I was almost going to do Interstellar, by the way, so we can talk about Interstellar.
Sure. It doesn't matter. Either one. I can't really say anything about A Space Odyssey other than I've heard of it. Interstellar. So I was telling you about our other podcast we had done before about watching it in German and trying to figure out what was going on. It's because of Interstellar that I came up with that idea, because I saw Interstellar for the first time in Thai and I had no idea what was going on. And I was so confused and so lost. I came home and I had to read a bunch of stuff, and then I still didn't understand anything, so I had to download it and watch an English version of it. So I spent about 9 hours with Interstellar, and I don't really like the movie, sadly.
Here's what I'll equate that to a 2001 experience. I know from a film's point of view, and from really being into 2001, because 2001 is one of my favorite movies. You cannot, I will say this right now to anyone who thinks there's some film genius, you cannot understand 2001: A Space Odyssey unless you've read the book 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was meant to be consumed that way. So there are all these people who claim they can understand 2001 from just seeing the movie because they're lazy and don't want to read like a 300-page book. So go read the book and then go see the movie and you'll understand it. So I think you've had a similar experience to how someone would see 2001, as in seeing it in theaters and not understanding it with Interstellar. One of my trivias I was going to use for Interstellar was the opening sequence of Interstellar has these people talking about the blight. That is real footage from Ken Burns' The Dust Bowl. And so those people were real people talking about when America was over-tilled and we couldn't grow stuff and there was a lack of crops and people thought that all of America would starve to death. And so that was real footage, but people believed it was fake mockumentary type footage because of the brilliant editing of Christopher Nolan and his team.
Yeah.
He claims there's no CGI, which is another claim of all of his movies.
Wait.
Christopher Nolan.
He's saying there's no CGI at all in the entire movie? Or just in those clips?
No computer-generated graphics in any of Christopher Nolan's movies is what he claims. So that means he may use effects, he may use color correcting, he may use computer effects to change things, but he is saying no 3D program has generated any body in that movie, in any of his movies, he claims.
Okay, so just the people. Because like in Interstellar, 2 buildings collapse on top of you. Or not Interstellar, Inception. 2 buildings. Right. That's all practical.
Sure. Why shouldn't it be? Why, you can refract a lens to make it look as though the thing's falling. You could take camera footage and composite it. He's not saying he doesn't composite things. So you could take you could, for example, fly a helicopter with a camera in a reverse angle. So instead of making it fall, you could fly a helicopter from the ground up into the air, reverse that footage, and it will look like a building is falling, and then add, not via CGI, but via practical effects or drawing or clever compositing, the view of rubble and things like that. But he claims there is no CGI in his movies.
Do you believe that?
I don't.
Yeah.
But I do believe he makes a conceited effort to hide it, and I believe in a lot of his effects. I can think of a way in which it's done without CGI. I have a hard time believing that when he's up against the wall with studios, especially working with American studios, that he doesn't rely on it and that maybe does it a little bit secretly. But most of the things in his movies, I could, as a filmmaker, give you a version in which he does it without CGI. But again, I doubt there's a scene specifically in Interstellar where a cloud gets broken apart. It could be done with Photoshop and just simple drawing, but I sort of doubt it.
Yeah.
But
Christopher
the
Nolan,
robot in Interstellar is real.
Yeah.
I know that.
Yeah. Christopher Nolan is probably the greatest directorial artist in the mainstream, I would think. I would
say he's one of the few actual directors where that word applies in mainstream Hollywood big theater release movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I love almost everything he does. The later stuff, I didn't like Interstellar. What was the last thing he did?
Dunkirk.
I haven't seen that yet. I have a hard time catching new releases, anything that's come out in the last couple of years, because I have maybe a week window where living in Thailand, it's in English in the theater. And so I'm like, if I don't catch that week, then I'll just wait until it comes out. And then by the time it comes out, I forget to watch it.
I'll say this, make a concerted effort to see Dunkirk in theaters, but also you don't need to see it in English. You don't actually need to speak English to understand the English version.
Yeah.
It is a very visual movie, and the soundscape of it is what everyone's talking about. The soundscape of the bullets, how much they've cranked up bass on the movie, and how if you see that in a proper theater, you are going to be scared properly the way that you would be scared by the sounds of a war.
Yeah, I heard it gave a lot
appropriately the plane that goes over. It's a lot of planes buzzing and you feeling like, oh my god, a plane. But it's a really good movie for something to see it in a foreign country. It's a great movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's out of theaters in my town already.
Dang, wow.
Yeah, we have two theaters that have 4 screens each, which is actually a huge improvement from 3 years ago when we had 0. But movies do not last very long.
That's so, I would not think that about Thailand.
Well, so I live in a small town. Chiang Mai is probably one that you would know. It's about 4 hours from us. And then,
okay. So I kind of know Chiang Mai, and you're 4 hours from Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
That's far.
And in Bangkok, we're 9 hours from Bangkok.
Yeah. I wouldn't even think
So those are like the 2 big cities where you can kind of live a more Western style life. Like you could get anything you could get in America, you could get in those cities. We're pretty far from that ability. I mean, it's getting better. Our town's getting bigger, but it's still. But anyways, the point is movies don't last very long in here.
So hardcore sci-fi, we were talking about that in the last time we did an episode. Are you a fan? When I think of hardcore sci-fi, I think of Heavy Metal Magazine. I think of, we were talking about L. Ron Hubbard in the last episode, that I think he's hardcore sci-fi. I've bought old magazines just to be able to read stuff. What do you think about that kind of stuff?
I was never really that much into sci-fi. I don't really like genres. I don't decide what I'm going to watch based on a genre. I just watch what I hear is good. Like, if people are impressed by the movie, I'll go and see it. I try to avoid, the only example I can think of is Baywatch, right? Like those cash grab type of movies.
The new Baywatch, you mean?
Yeah. Where it's just, there's no one wanted to make Baywatch, I don't think. No one was like, I have to do this thing, But like when you think of Christopher Nolan making The Dark Knight, that's like, oh, this is his vision coming to the screen.
Yeah, I, for example, I just made a movie called Spiders Will Eat Your Face, and in that, I espouse, in that and my last movie, my last, full stop motion movie, which was, Hamster's Day History, I espouse some pretty anti-genre sentiments, which is to say, I think that the anthropomorphization of pets has ruined America's specifically understanding of animals. So hamsters, which are used as these sidekicks and talking animals, well, you should understand what the animal is before you anthropomorphize it, which is to say make it seem like a human, make it talk. And so now people don't understand it because it's too cute as a human type sidekick. And then, so that was sort of my anti-sci-fi thing. And then I was very anti-horror in Spiders Will Eat Your Face because I said, well, spiders are one of the least dangerous species of animals on the planet. You should be very scared of mammals who have a huge amount of carnivores in their ranks. And most of the species are deadly and can kill you and can pass viruses like rabies to you. You should be very scared of those, which mammals don't get turned into horror creatures, even though some of the worst the worst predators on the planet, the most dangerous predators on the planet are mammals. But yet mammals look cute and cuddly, even tigers and things like that. We turn into the Lion King, we turn into these friendly things. This is the opposite of spiders, which there's less than 1% of the spiders on the planet can do anything to you. You would not even call out of work sick for most spider attacks. So it's very strange to me. And in that way, I don't like genres. And I think I'm a fan of genre benders like, your Tarantinos, your Kevin Smiths.
Yeah.
But hardcore sci-fi is the opposite.
Yes.
I love hardcore sci-fi. I love just very, very take a science theory and run with it and make all these rules and propose a theory in a universe. I like that a lot. I like
passion. I like anything where I can feel the people who made it like had to make it. And it doesn't really, like if it's a romantic comedy, if it's a horror movie, if it's whatever, right? Like if it feels like, oh, this was something someone had to make, that's the movie I want to watch, regardless of whatever it is, regardless of the genre or the type or the tone. It's like, I just want to consume passion.
Right, like there's certain examples that cross that edge. Like I think Love Actually is one of you said romantic comedy. Love Actually is one of those movies where it's so hard to tell whether there's passion in there or whether it's simply that, because when you look at that movie, that's a cash grab movie, Love Actually. I don't know if you've seen that.
I've seen parts of it. I never sat down and watched the whole thing.
Sit down and watch the whole thing. It is actually a phenomenal movie. But when you look at it on paper, it is, and it's loved by real movie fans and romantic movie fans. When you look at Love Actually, you go, this is a cash grab movie. It has every big British movie star. It is such a cheap plot. It's just Hugh Grant and all these, and the guy who plays Snape and Liam Neeson and, it's just meant to get you in the theaters. But when you watch it, you're like, this is a great movie about love and the holidays and just, it's beautiful. And so I'm more a fan of when I don't know whether it's one or the other, which is why when people ask me what my favorite genre is, I don't say sci-fi, I say Christmas movies, because it is so hard to tell whether someone actually gives a crap about the meaning of Christmas or whether someone was forced to take a job and do a Christmas movie, which they know will come around every year. And so they have to take the job.
One of the examples that came to mind right now is, did you see Why Him with Bryan Cranston and James Franco?
No, wait, what is that? Why him?
It was, so James Franco is an app builder and becomes super mega rich. Like billions and billions of dollars or whatever. And he is dating Bryan Cranston's daughter. And they come to visit and meet him for the first time. But he is has no filter and just says everything that comes to his mind and just, it's Bryan Cranston going crazy about why is my daughter dating this guy. And
I think you and I should we could take this opportunity. I always like to, I'll tell you the example I don't like of this is, one time I was at a bar and I wanted like something and I was asking for the bartender do you have a whiskey sour? And he said, we don't have sour mixed here. And I go, can you make something that's like a whiskey sour? And he made a drink for me. And I said, you can name this because it's the first time anyone's had this drink, right? And he just didn't care. So I think right now you and I should take this opportunity to take a movie like a Love Actually, like a Why Him. I have another one to add to it, like a You, Me, and Dupree, where it is this genre that you cannot tell whether it was meant to be a seat grabber. I mean, Bryan Cranston, James Franco, that's a seat grabber, but ends up having this heart to it that we attach to.
yeah.
Let's name it. Let's name it as a genre.
What genre that would be?
You and I get to name it.
All right.
Yeah, we get to name it right now.
All right. If you got any ideas, I'm pretty terrible on the spot when it comes to titling things, but I'll do my best here.
Throw out what's in your heart. Just throw it out there.
Well, the thing that I enjoy about them is that they cross everything, right? That it is kind of genre-less. That there's not... Genre
crossers.
Genre crossers?
Crisscross genre. Crisscross. Boom. It's the crisscross genre. All right, now keep talking about...
And so they don't, like, you watch the trailer and it seems like just a basic comedy, like a dirty romantic comedy is what the trailer comes off. And it is. Like, I don't want to oversell its value because it is that. But when you watch it, there's like, you feel connected to the characters. You feel depth and like, oh no, there's reasoning and thought behind this. And it's not just, it's not Meet the Fockers again. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like this miscommunication and bad stuff happens out of that. There's actual depth and, thought behind everything. I don't know. I just thought.
Yeah, I would add Along Came Polly to the crisscross genre in terms of Meet the Fockers, because I think that's another one that is Ben Stiller is hot off of Meet the Parents and Along Came Mary, and so let's write this thing where, Ben Stiller's like, I'm just going to crank out this thing and It's a romantic, whatever. And I think that Along Came Polly hits with a lot of people. Along Came Polly invents the term shart, which not a lot of people realize.
Yeah.
That is the first. Philip Seymour Hoffman invents that word in that movie. And that's amazing to think of this sort of crisscross thing, getting something that hits so hard at the soul of dirty comedy, even though it is a very tame romantic comedy. I think you're right that there are these, you know what it is? It's the moments. It's not necessarily the whole thing is there, but if you sit and you really watch the whole time, there's this moment where you're like, oh, that's so me. That's so my family. That's so me and my wife or my girlfriend or my husband. That's so, oh my gosh, that's so us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right there in 1 second. That was it. And then the whole movie becomes framed.
Yeah. I was talking about this the other day is, regardless of the stories and the, the world that's created in any movie, the most compelling thing of any of it is the interaction between the characters. You can have
so
dragons.
I get a lot of, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say you can have dragons and zombies and, heists and all this crazy, crazy stuff going on. But the value and the meat of those movies is when the characters interact with one another and how they respond to one another and what they do in that relationship.
You're so right, because I think Shaun of the Dead, it came to mind instantly when you said zombies and this crisscross thing, because Shaun of the Dead for the most part is a parody movie, which should be written off as sort of, okay, it's a parody movie. And I think there is only 5 seconds in the movie that give it the legitimacy to join the genre. What you're talking about with one moment, and that is at the end of the movie where he hands his friend who is a zombie an Xbox controller.
Yeah.
That moment, despite the rest of the movie being a commentary on zombie movies, that single moment, that single frame of, yes, if my best friend was a zombie, I would still play video games with him.
Yeah.
Like, that one moment turns the movie into a joke about Dawn of the Dead and every other stupid action movie where they're killing zombies in a mall, and let's make fun of that and the bad plans and things like that. It turns it into this legitimate thing, and those interactions are good. I get a lot of heat from the internet mostly because I often say that I think when people criticize movies nowadays, what they're doing is criticizing the radio story, and they're criticizing the sort of very plotty version of it. And I like the way you're looking at this crisscross genre, because it's like, no, it's not about just the MacGuffin or the plot points. It's about the little moments.
Yeah.
That can only happen on film.
Yeah. And I think Edgar Wright is great at that. The Coronado trilogy is so good. Especially, I
have to say, did you see Baby Driver?
That's another one that came through and was gone so quick. I didn't even have a chance to see what time it was playing.
I talked about it on my other podcast. There were a lot of previews for it. The previews were unbearable. I left during the previews.
You didn't see it at all?
Nope. Went to see Baby Driver. The previews for it were the worst things on the planet, and it's my opinion that if you're going to show me 20 minutes of horrible stuff, if it's all really horrible, I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave because I don't care if it's only a preview for the thing to come. 20 minutes of previews, 20 minutes of anything, no matter what it is. I'm out of there if it sucks.
Yeah. They here in Thailand, the previews are awful. And there's no like genre consideration for when you're going to see. And so what happens is I will take my kids to go see, what did we just see? Cars 3. And there's horror movies, like Thai horror movies are popping up. And I'm like having to try to cover my kids' eyes because I have a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old. And I'm like, don't look at this part. And my 7-year-old was shut down the entire time during the movie because she was so afraid of the horror stuff in the previews.
That is horrible.
Yeah, it happens every time. We try to time it to where the previews start afterwards, but it's so hard to line that up.
I have to admit, I literally just today, before we were recording, put out a tweet that was directly making fun of the MPAA. And now that is a pretty good thing that actually does help. You know, you need a red band trailer, right? The red thing that says this is approved. That's a pretty good thing that the MPAA does here. But my tweet was about how there is no age limit for books, so a kid can go into a library and buy an Oscar Wilde book, or a bookstore and buy, your 3-year-old can go into Barnes and Noble and buy 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah.
There's no reason they can stop that child because it's sold in a bookstore. You're in America, only children cannot buy, what are classified as pornographic books.
Sure.
Which nowadays is getting harder and harder to get. I mean, they're just letting everything through, but pretty much unless there are images of nude people in this country, your kid can buy it. And so my tweet was about, how kids, if you want sex and violence, it's in the books. Go buy the books. But the MPAA does do a good job with previews, and that I had no idea was that bad, like hardcore horror and stuff.
Yeah, like eyeballs falling out of the face and blood pouring out all over, ghosts popping up and jump scares. And so even if they're not looking,
so much more into horror than we are.
Yeah.
It's a much better genre there that, oh man, I can't imagine.
I don't really like the movies that come out from here. But they cross genres so hard that it's like slapstick comedy, at least in the trailer. The movies might be different. The trailers are like slapstick comedy with hardcore horror. Like, so the first half will be like, super sound effects and, people bumping into each other and laughing and running around. And then it shifts and just turns into like, now there's a ghost trying to kill these, three stooges who were running around for a while. And it's very strange.
The stereotype that the film industry says about Asia is that they are in the 50s, which is to say not that they're behind the times in technology, which they're not, or in filmmaking, which they're not, but that marketing-wise, this isn't me saying, this is what the general stereotype is that they're in the 50s, which is to say they're marketing things as a something for everyone kind of movie. So if you look at previews of, for example, African Queen, which is, one of the first color movies that Humphrey Bogart does, it's meant to be romantic. It's meant to be funny. This something for everyone type of movie. It's meant to be thrilling. It's meant to be, exciting. It's, the whole family goes and it's a whole thing. It's everything across the board. That is where Asia is. So that does track with the stereotype. But I also imagine that maybe there's, less genre conforming, so the filmmakers are a little bit more free, and they can do more things like Evil Dead, where it's both scary and funny at the exact same time.
Yeah, I think it's some of that. I think the freedom is not quite. I think they have freedom. I think they lack the creativity to use that well. I think they make the same things kind of over and over again. Where it's like, this worked. Like specifically, like you look at the stores in town. If you have a shop that's successful, a one that is just like it will open up right next door because it's like, this is where people are going to go to get this thing. So let's start another one right next to them. So people will come to ours instead of trying to plan and market around it and put it somewhere else to compete. They just sit right next to them. And so they copy a lot, I think, with movies and stuff like that. Like, if this worked, we'll just do it again. Which isn't
to say that, that's not what Americans do too.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. The movies coming out now are 90%.
We can get into it.
90% of what comes out, I think, is just pretty bad.
So I straight up boycotted Marvel movies because of this.
Yeah.
Because I would watch Marvel movies and I was like, you can't just keep doing it. And then they came out with this plan, which seems ingenious, which is to say we're going to tell you every single movie that's going to come out for the next 7 years and for all of them to be the same. All right. Now that we're not on the J.J. Abrams episode, here's where I go into slamming on J.J. Abrams. Star Trek is clearly a version of that problem you're talking about in the theaters. Star Trek was a TV series meant to say, what are the philosophical problems? It was, in a very real sense of it, romantic. He was trying to say, well, what are these issues that, the romance authors were saying across time and space? Throughout forever, everyone will understand trees, everyone will understand flower, everyone will understand society. And so romance, when it was invented, was this idea of what, even if it's in the future, 1,000 years from now, people will understand that nature is fighting against man and vice versa, and that there's a harmony between the two of us. And that was what they wrote about. They wrote about trees overgrowing cathedrals and things like that. That was what romance novels wrote about. Romance poems and things like that. Then romance became about kissing and smooching and things like that. But Star Trek was meant to be this very romantic thing, which was meant to say, what are the issues that are going to transcend not nature here on Earth, but nature here across the stars? It was this ingenious thing to say, Gene Roddenberry, to say, romance must fly out into the galaxy, and that race and love and things like that will forever ring true no matter where we go in the stars, and this response to the Cold War and the things that were going on with rockets, and a beautiful thing. J.J. Abrams completely ruins that by making an action movie. It is so far from what Star Trek is supposed to be. This guy's so lost. It's crazy that we're giving him the keys to the kingdom to all these great series, which are meant to say so much. The idea that the plot of a Star Trek movie, the reboot of a Star Trek movie, is, can you punch Khan in the face hard enough to kill him, is so weird. Why is that what this is? It was never about, it was meant to be nerdy and dorky and for theater kids, and to say, can I love a woman who is black on one side and white on the other side, while I am white on the other side and black on one side? Instead of saying, like, if I punch Benedict Cumberbatch so hard he doesn't come back, then we win the war. Fights on flying spaceship skateboards. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, well, the problem is, how much more money did J.J. Abrams make than, the series before it? Well,
right. That's what it is. It's artistic integrity, because Star Trek got canceled.
Yeah. And it sucks that that money dictates art so much when it comes to movies and that type of media. You can so clearly see when someone has a clear vision. I was talking about this with my friend, about, animated movies, right? The DC animated stuff is supposed to be so much better than the live action stuff. And
by far, the best animated studio on the planet right now is DC animated movies.
And so my theory that I put forth is that they have to stay to their vision from the beginning to the end. You can't just say, you know what, let's change this, let's do this, let's adjust this here and there. They start with a clear vision and they hold true to that from beginning to end. Where in movies, the studio steps in and is like, hey, you know what? Let's put some more Will Smith in here, and let's put some more music in here. Like, talking about Suicide Squad, that giant mess. There's so many hands dictating what should be done, how it should be done, and like, oh, this will work better in China, so let's add this, and this will work better here. And it's the vision, the original vision gets so lost in all this extra stuff that gets added that it just becomes this giant mess. Where you have someone like Christopher Nolan, who is the visionary, who's driving the entire thing, you get a much better product at the end of it.
So I'm willing to talk praise about myself. I'm not such a small ego that I wouldn't do that. I believe in auteur theory 100%. If you watch my movies like Hamsters of History or Spiders Will Eat Your Face, I think they have this strong voice which is focused on the truth. And so those are stop motion movies, they're documentaries, but I'm so focused on presenting the truth about a pet or an animal, and a style that is not just, I have to stick to the style, I want to stick to the style, which is I think what you're talking about there too, which is that if you make such a big team, not just production wise, but what you're talking about, which is funding wise, which is someone's vision of it wise, that you are going to end up with someone saying, well, this will be good for my friends over here, and this will be good for the people I know there. If you watch my movies, there's a clear vision from the beginning that not just I have to stick to the end to make the movie good, but I want to. And so then I'm doing it the other way around. I'm finding a true story and making it fit into the style and letting the story be this version of the story, the most this version of the story as it's ever been. And despite a lot of filmmakers recognizing auteur theory. What succeeds in theaters is not auteur. Miyazaki doesn't do well in this country, despite the fandom it has on the internet. Even Dunkirk probably isn't doing as well as it should, despite it being possibly the best movie of the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's very odd. We're at a point right now where I think you're frustrated by it in terms of what good movies get made, but it's frustrating for this push and pull between good art and the industry, where the good art isn't really doing well, but then the industry doesn't want to really just push it on, because, the example I give is CBS. There's sitcoms on CBS that are very successful. And I'll say to people, they don't have to make that. And people say, why? I go, it's the most watched network. They can make whatever they want. They're Channel 2. It comes in on TVs that have been broken for years. They can make whatever they want and it will be monetarily successful. But they choose not to. And it's reinforced by them making money.
Yeah. Well, like you look at AMC, right? They had Breaking Bad, which was, I think, one of the greatest TV series that had come out for a long time. And then you have The Walking Dead kind of coming off of that success, like that momentum, and you see how much AMC's influence over The Walking Dead has totally just killed it. I mean, I don't know your opinions about either of those shows, but in my opinion, Walking Dead started out from a decently high place and just got run into the ground and became so awful.
Well, I'll say this. I'm a big fan of the guy who wrote The Walking Dead in terms of his comics, and I'm a big fan of the story. I think that Americans dictate a lot of entertainment stuff, is uncomfortable with what he proposed in his very idea of the comic, which was to say, this is the world now, there is no ending, that this is just how things are. And there's no plot twists or cliffhangers or things like that, because there are no plot twists or cliffhangers in life. But the zombie genre is so used to, not slice of life, which is what it is. He's saying it's slice of life, but the life is that of the extreme life, of life and death being thrown on you all the time because of a zombie crisis. His point was, the author said when he wrote it, I wanted to make something I could literally keep writing until the day I die. That there was no need to kill anyone off or keep someone alive or finish a plot point. It was just, I could keep writing a million issues. And I think that's what you're seeing with AMC, maybe their influence, is that they're struggling to see it. At the same time, I will say AMC's influence or lack of influence is what made Breaking Bad great. AMC wouldn't give that team enough money to shoot in, I believe it was California where it was supposed to be set. Or no, where was it? It's supposed to be a real hotbed of drug activity, actually. It was meant to be about the cocaine wars. And, they then were forced to shoot in New Mexico, which had this very distinctive desert plain, and they changed the series to be about New Mexico. I think maybe it was either Miami or California, and they didn't have the money. They were just like, no, you can't shoot there. And so they said, try and make New Mexico look like California or Miami. And they're like, no one can do that, because New Mexico is so distinctly New Mexican. It is this very distinct place. There's, for example, no palm trees, so we cannot do it. And they just went with it. It's hard to know. I always get upset when someone says, oh, the studios made them do it, because there's plenty of great examples of directors saying, okay, deal with it. And so you did it. I mean, Star Wars is a great example. Not a lot of people have seen that original Star Wars. It's a mess, but Lucas pulled it out. It really was ruined by the studio. $1 million budget, right, for their first Star Wars.
Well,
but he figured it out.
I think kind of the same along those lines. When the lack of the studio gives the director room to do that, right? So the studio's saying, hey, we're not going to give you money, figure this out when it comes to Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
So he had to be creative and move from there. When the studio steps in and is stifling creativity, like, hey, you have to put a shot of Taco Bell 3 times in every episode. Figure that out. That's when the studios really start making issues, because now you are forcing the story to, hit these points that doesn't need to happen naturally.
Right.
And
I think it's interesting we talked about Marvel, because that's clearly what's going on with Marvel and DC.
Yeah.
That's clearly the issue.
Marvel's a difficult thing because they have it. What happens is they have a property they don't care about, and they'll give a director a chance to make the movie, and it does really well, and it's really good, and then they're like, all right, well, let's make Guardians of the Galaxy 2, and now let's do it our way, and it just does not work the same. Even though it's the same guys, as James Gunn did both, the tone and the feel of the second one was nothing like the first. And part of that is it's hard to make a sequel, but I think part of it is like, oh no, we should capitalize on this opportunity.
A big part of it too is that they're all just trying to copy Jon Favreau's style. And it's so hard because he's so unique. And, even when the year Iron Man 3 came out, Jon Favreau wasn't on it and he made Chef.
Yeah.
And you just see how that's a filmmaker who's adapting to the times. And then to see this, artifacts of him, left over in something else is, it's sad. It's sad to see that, people trying to copy that. I don't know whether the studios have as much of an influence as we think. I'm always interested in bonus features because of things like that, to see what really went wrong. I mean, audio commentaries are a godsend. If you've never seen, big one I recommend to people is the second Fantastic Four, the Silver Surfer. Go listen to the audio commentary. It's a very interesting audio commentary about the push and pull between studios and laziness, quite frankly. The filmmakers admit to it. They admit to a great deal of story laziness on the audio commentary.
Well, I think
it's very interesting.
That's part of no one wanted to make that movie. They're making it because, the first one made money, let's make a second one. No one had the story in mind. No one had the driving passion to actually produce it. People were just like, this is our job. This is our paycheck. Let's get this done. Where you look at The Room.
Sorry, go on.
Have you seen The Room?
I will admit this. I could have been the coolest guy in the universe. I lived in Boston in these years where The Room was still a cult classic, and every year Tommy Wiseau would go to the Coolidge Corner Theater, and it was known amongst diehard film fans. This was 5 or 6 years ago. It was known amongst diehard film fans that this was this crazy movie. And every year, Tommy Wiseau would do a midnight screening, and Tommy Wiseau would go to the Coolidge Corner Theater and defend, pretty much to a room of Boston, film heads, why his movie didn't suck.
Yeah.
And I never went. And because I didn't do it then, I sort of have said since then, I don't really need to see this. But I know very much of The Room. And so, and I've watched several scenes.
It is awful. It is legitimately terrible. It is shot so poorly. The script is terrible. There's hardly anything redeeming about it other than his passion behind it. You can feel like he had such a driving force to make it, that I think is why it sticks around. Cause there's tons and tons of terrible movies. There's tons of movies that are equally as bad and equally as goofy, but the earnesty he had in making it is what makes it, people want to watch it again. It's not just bad for bad's sake. It's bad with the intention of being, amazing.
Yeah, one of my writing partners, Bill Moore, who is a sketch writer and does a lot of awesome stuff. Him and I own the same collection of 500 sci-fi movies, and you can tell that people had too much money at one point and they just made it. I mean, we're the other way now where, filmmakers like me are struggling to get funded. We're fighting against it, but we have a lot of passion to the things we make. But at the same time, I'll say, I imagine that people at Marvel really think they're being passionate. I one time got in a lot of trouble because I met someone who was working closely with someone at Sci-Fi, SYFY.
Yeah.
And this was long before Sharknado. And, long before people knew what was going on there. And I had many friends who would call me up on the phone and be like, come over right now. I've paused my TV. There's a sci-fi movie you need to watch. And I would come over and we would be dying. And so I met someone who was working with Sci-Fi and I said, do they know? That was all I said was, do they know? And this person's response was, they believe they are making great science fiction movies and they are very passionate about them. So it goes both ways. Where those people definitely, like the people who make those sci-fi movies, I believe this person, they definitely think that's a dope sci-fi movie. Like they definitely think this is a great monster movie. Despite everyone else knowing the opposite.
Yeah, I think the difference, for me at least, or from my perception, is why did you start to make that movie? Because I think a lot of those sci-fi movies, they're trying to fill gaps, right? They're like,
same with Hallmark movies, which you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. That's another good example, is they're like, we're trying to produce 20 originals this year, or whatever it is. I don't know the actual number, it doesn't matter. But that's where they start from, right? Like, let's find people who can fill these holes and we'll go from there. Instead of where Tommy Wiseau, he put $6 million of his own money into this movie. Like, he funded it himself, he wrote it himself, he basically shot it himself and did all these crazy things. And I mean, again, it's legitimately awful. It's not a fun thing to watch, but it holds true to that passion, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because it does have, visually I actually do appreciate it because it harkens back to True Romance and the Jean-Claude Van Damme movies and, another Wayward series, with Liam Neeson, but then Liam Neeson's not in the other ones. I'm gonna forget it right now, but I'll remember
Wars,
like 20 minutes.
The first one?
Not Star Wars. He plays a man who's lost his face. Why can't I remember the name of the series? But either way, it harkens back to this era of action movie, which clearly Tommy Wiseau loves, and I do love too. And so whenever I see clips from it, I go, oh, it's just meant to look like these old movies. And he does do that perfectly, but he made the huge mistake of thinking he could act and thinking he could write. That movie is 1,000% better had he just spent $1 million of that dollars on a punch-up writer and taken a step back.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, talking about kind of on the same lines along that, is the original Star Wars, A New Hope, right? You have George Lucas, who was kind of the visionary, the writer and all that, but he had all these great people around him who pushed back against his ideas, where, like, I can't think of anyone's name right now. Spielberg. People who are like, hey, no, don't do that. We're not doing that. That's weird. Let's cut that out. They didn't just give him free reign. And so you see Star Wars, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, with these people who are creatively, not like shaping it, but like kind of readjusting where his focus is. Then you have the prequels, which was, basically all him, where people are like, okay, yeah, you're the genius. You know what you're doing. You know what's going to work. You made the original trilogy. And then you see how far, like, the difference in the quality of the heart of it.
I feel the exact opposite. I'm on record of this before, but yeah. A New Hope, not a lot of people have seen the original cut. They're actually really hard to find. George Lucas's wife owns the original cut, and he's divorced from his original wife, his ex-wife now, so you can't see the original cut. The reason he remastered it was not only because he created, Industrial Light Magic Studios, which was a CGI studio, but he remastered it and resold it because his wife owned the original cut, and so he could own the second ones. If you watch the original cut of A New Hope, I hate the original cut of A New Hope. I think it's a bad movie. I think the effects are bad. I think it looks cheesy. It looks overdone. The bar scene in Mos Eisley is one of the worst scenes in movie history in the original thing. There's little Batman and crickets and all these cheap things that they clearly took from the studio. I hate that. I love the remastered versions of it. And this is why I think this is an internet.
I think what I was talking about was the prequels, the 1, 2, and 3.
So the prequels is not really that. So it's known that George thought of the original concepts of the prequels many years ago. But in fact, there's a lot of documentaries and in the audio commentary footage, he and the production team admits his son wrote a large amount of the film and the creative people took over. And I actually love those movies because there are visual elements and story elements to them that not a lot of people appreciate. For example, when you get to 3, if you listen to the audio commentary of it, Revenge of the Sith, which is the greatest sword fighting scene in the history of sword fighting, no matter what anyone wants to say about anything about those movies.
Well, I'll say, I think number 3, Revenge of the Sith, the second half, was my favorite Star Wars until Rogue One came out.
Oh, I hated Rogue One, but we don't have time to go to Rogue One.
That's my favorite.
But whatever you want to say, Obi-Wan Kenobi versus Anakin Skywalker is the greatest sword fighting scene in movie history, and that can't be ignored. But when you listen to the art directors on the audio commentary, what they're saying is in 3, when you're listening to it, they're going, all we're doing now is we think this is, we're trying to make this, we're trying to get every single shot of a planet we haven't got before. So on this planetary system, we haven't had a shot yet where a moon is obscuring the sun and we see the planet in the background. And so that's how this establishing shot is done. There is immense artistic vision that's done in those first 3 movies. And the thing that I say to people about the new Star Wars movies is when you watch Rogue One and you watch, I don't even know what was the other movie called?
A New Hope Part 2, I think.
Whatever, that's another stupid internet theory that it's the same as A New Hope. It's not the same.
It's pretty close.
It isn't at all. But now I'm really now we're doing this. Okay, so.
It's so close.
When you watch that movie, what is new about that movie? Like, when you watch A Phantom Menace, oh my gosh, the worlds we go to see, Nubian ships, which is the thing, which is that all the Nubian technology that the Jedis have these crazy, they have so much money and you see these, it's the height of the Jedi Empire and you see all these technology and these elaborate architectures and we go to Naboo and we see this beautiful, oh my God, it's like Florence on crack. This world, these hanging gardens and stuff like that. And we go to the underworld city of the Gungans. And it's just mind blowing. What are the things that we learn about in Star Wars Episode 7? The planet of clotheslines with the frog lady? It is the most boring movie you could ever see, Episode 7. And same with Rogue One.
Oh, I agree.
I
think 7 is awful.
But even Rogue One, when they talk about that scene in the original Star Wars, you get the impression that people, like a lot of people die. And then that battle isn't that bad. And it doesn't even make sense because if they had taken down walkers before, surely someone would have said to them, hey, if you ever see a Death Walker again, Rebellion, make sure to tie them up because that's the only way to take them down. Oh, I hate Rogue One. I hate God, I hated that movie. Nothing happened.
I go back to, what is it called? What is number 1 called?
A Phantom Menace?
Phantom Menace,
or
thank you. Phantom Menace. Yeah, just going by the episode numbers. There is an interview, not an interview, but a recording of George Lucas talking about how Jar Jar Binks is.
Right. This is from The People versus George Lucas made this interview very famous, and he's like, I don't give a shit, whatever. let people do whatever they want. If they hate the character, I don't really care. Make him worse. Right? This is this whole famous interview where he's saying it's in there as a goofy character. I don't care.
And I don't know, man. The prequels were terrible up until the second half of the third movie, in my opinion. They were even at the time, I was 12 when I saw The Phantom Menace, 12, 13, and I did not like it even at the time.
Oh, hey, don't tell me when you saw double lightsabers, you did not flip out. Everyone in the theater when they saw, here's the moments that I say when people hate the prequel, I go, don't tell me you didn't flip out.
My favorite part
Two-sided lightsabers in one. Hold on, I want to list them just before you try to refute them. Dual-sided lightsabers in one. Yoda with a sword in two.
I hated that
and then
so much.
20-minute sword fight scene in 3.
My favorite part of the prequels was the Nintendo 64 Pod Racer game.
Pod racing! I mean, come on. We're learning about the universe. It's so much, it's this thing that Star Wars fans who were just waiting for years for something to come out, if you weren't going to get attached to it, it's so good. But now it's this homogenized thing where no one wants to make choices, that nothing happens. I mean, even the idea of this character that's so moved by the death and destruction of the Empire that he has to leave the Empire. And then the first thing he does is go kill other people? Why wouldn't he be a pacifist? Why wouldn't he say, I can't kill people anymore? Like, it's so nonsensy. And Princess Leia. Oh God, what an awful addition to the movie. She cannot act anymore, or I guess now never anymore, but she couldn't act in that. She was very, very bad.
Yeah. What is it called? It's, 7.
One of us will get it.
This is awful. Anyone listening to this is so
screaming.
The Return, no. The Last Jedi? No, that's the next one.
The peanut butter and jelly. No, that can't be it. Return to Death Island. No. Look at it.
Star Wars Episode 7.
The Mystery Mobile.
Is it something about hope again? No, it's not.
I think it is. I think there is a hope in there.
I'm gonna have to just look this up real quick. This is gonna make me crazy. But anyways, you don't think number 7 is just J.J. Abrams making part 4 again?
No, absolutely not. We have no reference to the past wars. We have no...
The Force Awakens. Man, that was...
The Force Awakens. Right. I think this was an internet article that somebody wrote and everyone's adapted it. I think it's drastically different than...
I disagree because when I saw it, I was like, man, this feels a whole lot like number 4, just sitting in the theater. And then they had the Death Star again and all that. And I was like, oh, this is just hitting on a lot of the same moments that the 4th one had.
Well, no, because I'll tell you what it is 4 is very much the Odyssey. It's very specifically the Odyssey. It's this very Joseph Campbell reference. And it's this idea that, Odysseus needs a ship. And, he's more of an Argonaut. So Luke Skywalker is a combination between Odysseus and Jason. But the idea is we need a ship to go on this journey to restore balance. Rey is given everything. Rey is meant to defend herself. The battle comes to Rey. Rey does not seek out the battle. Rey is not called to action. There is no message from space that makes her do it. Luke doesn't want to go. Luke, what we call in Joseph Campbell's The Journey with the Hero with 1,000 Faces, there are 2 modes. There's the hero who is forced into action, and there's the hero who rises to the call of action. And Luke is forced into the call of action. He does not want. He's the reluctant hero, as we call it. Luke wants to join some sort of, he wants to take the fight somewhere. He's a young kid. He doesn't really know what's going on, but he still is using this excuse of the farm to not leave. It's only when his parents his uncle and aunt are killed that he, of course, must go with Obi-Wan Kenobi. He has no other choice. Rey is in a defensive position where she very much wants to go somewhere, and the fight is brought to her and thrown on her doorstep in a way that she is happy to take. And that's a very basic thing. There's other story elements that aren't even there. Luke is looking for something to complete his life as opposed to Rey, who has nothing. Luke is well off. He's a farm boy. He would be fine for the rest of his life running the moisture farms. His life is ruined by the Empire. As Rey, who's a poor child, who has nothing, who's a street urchin, more like Anakin Skywalker, who, if anything, Force Awakens is more like Phantom Menace, where Rey has nothing, and she must therefore find something in her life, as opposed to Anakin Skywalker, as opposed to Luke Skywalker, whose the stability of his life is ruined by the Empire, and now must get real. It is not a fantasy anymore. This fantasy of fighting is not the same, and the plot is drastically different. The Force is not presented to Rey as a religion. It is something she has to go seek out. Obi-Wan clearly is trying to indoctrinate Luke. He knows who he is. He knows he's Anakin's son, and he knows his great abilities. Rey is forced to run to Luke Skywalker. Where is Luke Skywalker? If anything, Force Awakens is a remake of 5. Whatchamacallit? The Return. Return of the Jedi. Empire Strikes Back. Excuse me. Where Luke must go find Yoda. He must go find him because that is the only thing to do. It's the only way his life is going to be fixed. It's not at all. I think this was this article written, which someone wrote to emphasize that they had read George Lucas's theories on a hero with 1,000 faces, and it's misguided. And I see this we were talking about Christopher Nolan. You see this with The Dark Knight too, where people go, Batman has no superpowers. I go, he's a technomancer. And I've blown the minds of people who are novices at movies when I say Batman is a technomancer, which is the ability to create impossible technology. Their minds are blown because they've clearly read some article online which is pushing this position. Now, I'm not accusing you of that, obviously. Yeah. But I'm saying it's reinforced where you go, this is kind of like the first one, which of course is going along the lines of the hero with 1,000 faces. He's trying to make it mythological. J.J. Abrams is trying to make it hit your center, make it feel like these folklores and myths you've heard. But
the comparison
at the same time,
that I kind of have you watched Rocky movies with Sylvester Stallone?
Of course, I've seen every Rocky movie. Except for Michael B. Jordan. Excuse me, yeah.
Creed. Yeah, that's actually pretty good. But anyways, the point I'm getting at.
It means to see it. Just haven't,
Rocky 1 and Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa feels like the successor to Rocky 1. Like, it doesn't really matter you don't need to see 2 through 5 to appreciate Rocky Balboa.
Right.
And that's kind of what it felt, A Force Awakens. Maybe you can apply it to the entire original trilogy, but it felt very much like, that stuff that they did before. Like, don't worry about that. We're getting back to the heart of the original. Here's your X-Wings, here's your Death Star, here's your bad guy. It felt very much in tone with the original.
That to me is not what it's about. That to me is the toy version of what it's about. For me, Star Wars is about wizards. It's about, everyone feels like Luke when they start their life. They are this young kid that's like, I know I can be better, but I don't understand why. And then there's this fantasy of this wizard, Obi-Wan Kenobi, this old man. It turns out that indeed inside me is this power. And Anakin Skywalker is really how we all feel when we get older, which is to say, I want to change the world, but I'm so frustrated with that I can't do anything. And to what stake am I willing to go to change the world? And of course, Anakin makes the wrong choice. And that's why I like 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3 coming after it. Why I think J.J. Abrams has lost the plot, and I'm not trying to say I'm smarter than him, But I think that is what he's focused on, is X-Wings and things like that. What is the religious, if not philosophical meaning of those movies? What do I learn from Rey's journey? Almost nothing in that first movie.
Yeah.
What does she want? What has she learned? Zero. As opposed to Anakin who's learned that I don't have to be a slave my whole life, which becomes Anakin's whole journey, and Luke, who says, this fantasy of greatness can't be achieved without sacrifice, that I'm going to have to go through pain. It won't be about staying on my farm and hoping one day I get to fight evil. I'm going to have to lose an arm. I'm going to have to lose friends. I'm going to have to lose everything that's important to me before I change the world. What does Rey do even in that first movie? Nothing. She does nothing, and everyone wins and nobody does. Who dies? Harrison Ford, who I don't care about? This old smart bounty hunter? Who cares about him? And that's what she learns, is that a bounty hunter she's never met dies, and that she stalemates in a sword fight, and an army that she's never known about gets blown up. It's literally nonsense.
But
nothing happens in that movie.
do you think that was set up in the story between, what's his name? What's the bad guy's name in The Force Awakens?
Kylo Ren.
Yeah, between him and Han Solo, that it was a way for him to infiltrate. What do they call him now? It's not the Empire anymore.
The Empire 2 with even more toys.
Yeah.
I don't know what
when I saw that was my first thought. Was like, oh well, this just feels like a ploy to get him in deeper. Like that's gonna be the plot twist in number 9 or something like that. That this was all kind of set up to
what was set up?
Him murdering him or not murdering him, or for Kylo Ren to kill Han Solo. It didn't feel as earnest at the time. Do you know what I'm saying? Does that make any sense at all?
Maybe. Keep going.
So my point is, it looks like a betrayal, right? The son kills the father and it's this big tragedy, and this is him really accepting the dark side of the Force. When I watched it, my impression was, oh no, this feels staged, and that this is the way for Kylo Ren to infiltrate, to get deeper into the dark side, to destroy it from the inside out.
Well, I'll say one thing about the genuine things I found in terms of just themes. This is a movie of betrayals.
Yeah.
Think about the first things that happens in this movie is a stormtrooper switches sides. People are spying on each other. This is how the movie opens. Spies and espionage. So you might not be wrong in that sense. I will say Kylo Ren is possibly the first genuine Sith we have seen since episode 3. Kylo Ren floats with his emotions. If he wants to kill his dad at that exact moment, he's gonna kill his dad. That's who Kylo Ren, he's one of the few Siths we've seen. I think maybe he might be that scheming and conniving and planning, but if he wanted to kill his dad, that's what I'm gonna do. And I'm gonna kill my dad right now because I don't like him and I'm angry. That is the one saving grace of it, is that Kylo Ren really is, which is unexpected because that guy is not, a great, well-known, for being a revolutionary actor and being on Girls and things like that. But he is one of the few characters where instantly I was drawn to Kylo Ren. I think Kylo Ren is one of my favorite Sith. I'm a big fan of that he wears a mask, even though he's not deformed. That he is more of this, more like an emo person as opposed to the lost generation. He does not need to wear an eye patch, but he wants to wear an eye patch because Grievous and Sidious and Vader were all deformed, and he wishes he had the battle scars. He's possibly the only redeeming philosophical point of that entire movie is Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
who he's a real Sith. And J.J. Abrams' comedy works well with it, where, he destroys that console and those two stormtroopers swerve away. But I think you could be right that he's going to use this to twist later on. But I like him. I like him a lot.
Yeah. No, I think he has the most depth, or at least the most explored in that movie. I think that's the issue, is that everything was an introduction to these other things, and this, it's like, oh, look at the possibilities we have now that we have this property. We're gonna explore Ray's past. We're gonna explore,
right. It's so nothing.
You know, yeah, it's kind of Disney's MO, especially when you look at like the Marvel stuff. Everything is pointing to the next. Nothing is complete. Like, that's why Iron Man 1 was so good, was because it was a story. It had a beginning, a middle, and end. It had resolution. It had conflict, and things just fit nicely into that package. Now,
Iron Man 3 is very good. Have you seen Iron Man 3?
Yes. I've seen all of them except the second Thor, because the first one was awful.
Right. You shouldn't see anything other than the Iron Mans, but, Iron Man 3 I thought was the same way. I thought if you watch like Iron Man 2 as sort of an intermission between Iron Man 1 and 3, it's a nice movie.
Well, getting back to Jon Favreau, Chef, there's a theory that Chef was kind of his response to working for Marvel. That he was this big time.
The idea of the big chef, yeah.
And then doing an independent thing and like figuring out his roots and finding his passion and what he loves to do again. Which I always thought was interesting. Like,
that's called, we call that from my education, Lechner's Law. Lechner's Law says the story of a movie is the story of its making. The classic example being Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
Where the story is about a captain lost in his own mind, and of course the movie itself becomes totally unorganized. That's Lechner's Law. Lecchner law. But back to Star Wars, your point about it being disjointed and Kylo Ren being the only genuine character, I bring it back to the Rachel test from Friends. If you were to write an episode of Friends, you could write every character, even you not being a writer. If you've seen a few episodes of Friends, you could write every character except for Rachel. Now, I believe that every single character in A Force Awakens fails the Rachel test, which is to say that except for Kylo Ren, you could not predict what any character is going to say. They don't have a personality. Even BB-8 is not like C-3PO and R2-D2, where that relationship is C-3PO goes by what humans say, and R2-D2 knows humans never say what they mean. You need to do what keeps them safe.
Yeah.
You don't know what BB-8's gonna do. BB-8 just does cute stuff. You know what Kylo Ren will do. Even longtime characters like C-3PO who appears, like Princess Leia who appears, you have no idea what they're gonna do because they're just all over the place.
Well, have you ever seen J.J. Abrams' TED Talk about mystery?
No, because why would I? But
I don't know if I've actually seen the whole thing, but I've seen the points of it. Anyways, he has a box and he comes out and he's like, the whole idea is like, you don't know what's in this box, but now you're intrigued. And now you're going to listen to everything I say because you're intrigued about what's in that box, hoping that I'm...
Oh, JJ, I'm watching because it's a TED Talk and you're a multi-million-dollar box office hit. Oh, you're intrigued now. Oh, you're not just intrigued because you just don't have enough of a social... Who the hell goes to a TED Talk? That's why they're intrigued, JJ. Because they don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, JJ. That's what they're saying. I want to know what's in the box because I don't really have a place to go for Sunday Night Football, you idiot. Oh my God, I hate it so much.
But that's exactly what he tried to do with C-3PO with that stupid red arm.
That stupid red arm! Oh my God. Do you know, somebody told me that it's just because it appears in a comic book.
Oh, really?
That they wrote it into a comic book and then someone was like, yes, and do it in the movies too. Phil Coggin.
I
think that's how Jay feels. He just hears Obi-Wan over his... Should the scene make sense? And Obi-Wan goes, let go, JJ. Let the force run through you. Turn off the computer. Don't write anymore. That's it. That's how the scene goes.
What do you think about the machete order? Have you heard?
I also think it's an internet farce, and I'll tell you my order.
Okay.
Because the Machete Order eliminates one, which
One.
is the best movie.
Oh, you're so wrong.
It's the most important movie. It is the only interesting philosophical claims of the entire thing. Here's Michael's order, if you want to do Michael's order.
All right.
1, 4, 5, 2, 3, 6. So 1 is, here's a little boy named Anakin Skywalker. He has so much hope that the most controversial Jedi Master of all time, Qui-Gon Jinn, kills himself in order to save him. 4, okay, I guess there's Luke Skywalker, and he's somehow related to Anakin Skywalker. What has happened to the universe that this has gone in disarray? Anakin Skywalker was supposed to save everyone. 5, you find out Anakin turns into Vader, who is Luke's son. Okay, well, how does Anakin Skywalker become Vader? 2, 3, greatest sword fight scene of all time. Straight into number 6, which is by far the worst Star Wars movie ever made, until Force Awakens, where it's most, and then you find out the ending of that. I don't know that my order will stay the same with these new movies, but, I love 1 because it's very important to establish, A, that, Obi-Wan Kenobi is the greatest Jedi of all time, which is very important of 1. Obi-Wan Kenobi is the first Jedi to kill a Sith in 100 years. That's really important to realize that Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to go from this hotshot kid into a lonely man out in the middle of nowhere. Star Wars is about Obi-Wan Kenobi.
So here's what I would say. Let's cut up episode 1. Let's take out the Gungans. Let's take out the battle with the robots. What's that?
You think he's better than us? Movies are like that.
We can take out 95% of the pod race, and we can leave some of it in.
But why? Well, you gotta be a kid again.
I'm saying,
fun.
I'm saying let's cut it down. Let's cut the whole movie down 20 minutes and slam that into the second one. Put that at the beginning of the second one and then have a flash forward to Anakin and Obi-Wan training.
I like what you're doing. I'm gonna twist it a little bit.
All right.
How about we put in from Tatooine while Obi-Wan and Anakin are tracking down the assassin in the beginning of 2. So yeah, all 1 is about getting, we don't see much of the pod race. We don't see much of Tatooine. We mostly see, the establishing that the Sith is back.
Yeah.
And we put in all those Tatooine scenes while Obi-Wan and, Anakin are trying to find out about this plot to kill Amidala.
Yes.
And we look, so it's kind of cute that we're going in between little Anakin and little Amidala, who is, I forgot that she was 14, Natalie Portman, when she made that movie.
Yeah.
I forget all the time. So we cut between those scenes and Anakin being this angsty teen and then falling in love and him as a little kid fighting. I like that, actually. You know how that's more cut like the most forgotten thing of Star Wars ever, which is the hand-drawn, animated series, The Clone Wars, that's how that is cut more like.
Is it?
It's backstory present day, a lot more sliced together. You get to see Anakin's trials, which are very interesting. How he becomes a Jedi, how he earns his name, and some of the jokes they make. Like, I saved you from that pit that he says in 2. You get to see that pit. It really makes Anakin, the way that the movie was all changed for me was when someone says, if you watch 3, the beginning of 3, you have to realize that Anakin and Obi-Wan Kenobi are the most dangerous Jedis of all time. And that it's going to go from 2 Jedis taking down an entire battleship, a general's battleship. That's their plan to take down Grievous's battleship is send Obi-Wan and Anakin in there. I mean, that is dangerous to there are no more Jedis and the Jedi was fake. That's a very cool flip. And that changed a lot of the movies for me to say that at 3, you've got Obi-Wan and Anakin taking down a battleship the size of a planet to 5 to 4 where someone is in front of Darth Vader saying the Jedi Order is fake. Like, that's a fake religion. It's a big flip.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there is tons of story in the prequels in that time. I just think they told it pretty badly. I think if it were me, if with what we have without adding additional things, I think we could cut out a lot of the first one, some of the second one, and just combine those two into one movie, and it would make a much stronger piece.
I think you might be blasé to movies nowadays, but when those movies came out, visually, it was mind-blowing. And it still is. I would rather have posters from screenshots of establishing shots in 1, 2, and 3 than I would any other movie.
Sure.
The landscapes are beautiful. These ideas they have are magnificent. And it's a shame that people want a certain aesthetic from Star Wars, and that's what takes over, and that's where you have her now.
The establishing shots in all the movies are really well done. It's the set pieces when the actors are on it that it's awful, when it's completely green screen. I think about when Obi-Wan is jumping from spaceship to spaceship and Anakin is flying in this, I think it's the second one, the beginning of the second one. I hated that at the time, and I was a kid.
But it was something that wasn't done. That sense of space, that sense of that we can move actors anywhere.
Oh yeah, no, it was revolutionary.
It felt very freeing. It felt very freeing to think that these CGI scenes were no longer going to be like very limited to certain planes. It felt very open. It felt that we were in a completely fake world, and that's something to remember. That it was. Coruscant doesn't exist anywhere, and that's very cool to me.
No, it's cool. It's definitely from a technical standpoint, it's amazing. But from a visual storytelling, it was kind of hard. Like I think about the new Mad Max, the Fury Road, and the way they use CGI to improve all the practical effects. Like it was like airbrushing the practical effects to make them more impressive. And that's what CGI is, I think, done the best.
But Mad Max distinctively happens on Earth.
Sure.
And that is the one credit I have to give to the new Star Treks, at least the first new Star Trek movie. That movie doesn't happen on Earth. And that is an incredible feat. That I think even if you don't like a movie, you have to respect the artistic element of it.
Well, I think going back to the original movies, the way they got around issues and how they made things fly, like using the painting and compositing people walking through it and stuff like that to get the hangars and planes or the spaceships coming in and stuff.
Massive paintings. So a lot of people, if they don't know, these paintings that they used to establish the Death Star were some of them 40 feet long and 10 feet high. They were incredibly large paintings. That was the only way to get the resolution that you needed to make it seem real.
Yeah. Like to me, that is technically way more impressive than the CGI they did.
You would say that unless you start to understand the computing power involved.
Sure.
The render skills and things they have for the average computer, some of these even just single creatures would take the average computer days to do. So when you start to look at it that way, yes, it seems nicer that there's a physical thing you can understand, but when you look at the computing power, it's overwhelming. Even the one I look at is the Jungle Book. Anyone that's ever done hair rendering in CGI knows how difficult that is. And you watch the Jungle Book and there is hair on every inch of those animals' bodies. None of it's faked. It's all real hair coming out. And that is a terrifying thought to think about how much computing power Disney has.
Oh, yeah. They do amazing stuff. But again, I did not like the Jungle Book.
Oh, I hated it, but it's a bad movie. Christopher Walken talking out.
Oh, that was awful.
I want to be like you. I mean, how much worse could it get? But, but that monkey looked big.
That's true.
It did look big. Did he do that too? Is that also J.J. Abrams?
No, that was Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau did that?
Yeah.
Jeez, those guys are ruining everything. Let's take it away from them.
Yeah.
I think that's what the takeaway is here. Is someone lock those two in a cage and just not let them do that. Well, that's it too. That's, I think, the end of, that really is the summary of it with, coming from 2001 all the way to what we're talking about now is give somebody a chance,
Yeah.
Yeah. You look at Kubrick and it was a nut job, but they let him become more of a nut job and the movies got better. I really do think that. I really think 2001 is ununderstandable and Clockwork Orange is great. And then by the time you get to his later films, it's spectacular. He refused to fly towards the end of his life. He was absolutely nuts. But people believed in him as opposed to forcing these people to, why are you making Jon Favreau do the Jungle Book? Have him write a new story. Why is it a big deal that I don't want to see how J.J. Abrams get the whip out, make George Lucas keep doing them. Push the old man into the grave. I don't want to see, look at this new young guy, he's doing it, and I get to sit back and hang out with my little R2-D2 toys that can bring me food. I want to say, George, here, we're going to take a cattle prod and you're going to make this movie. That's what I want. I want to see Ben Burt in a wheelbarrow and we dump him into a Foley studio and we go, make noises, you old man. That's what I want.
Well, that's
what I don't young kids.
That's what I enjoyed about Rogue One, at least, is that it felt original-ish. You know what I mean? Like, maybe diet original. Like, it at least wasn't.
Oh, I'm stealing that.
It wasn't.
Oh, I'm taking that away.
It wasn't a Skywalker story, right? It was a departure from that, even though it's still in the same timeline, in the same, it affected it, all right? I mean, it didn't change anything, but it was a part of the same story. It felt separate from it all.
I will say this about the laziness of George Lucas. Kurosawa, who is generally considered between Spielberg and Lucas to be the greatest filmmaker of all time, who I agree with, Kurosawa is the greatest filmmaker of all time, made movies until the day he died. He was making Ron. His wife died in the middle of Ron. He took one day off and kept making Ron. I think George Lucas is lazy. I think that him saying I'm going to let other people make my movies is a insult to what he's done. And we should all as Star Wars fans rise up and say, George, get out of your chair and make a movie. You can do this until you die. Okay? It's ridiculous to think he has to pass this off to someone else. It's ridiculous.
I don't know.
A robot to make his limbs move for him and be a real life General Grievous, and he wouldn't have to work that hard, and he still doesn't want to do it.
I think I would prefer him not to do it, especially since he's kind of said he didn't want to. It's kind of
I don't care. You're in Hollywood. I don't care. Someone should come with a big heap of money and push him out of bed. Oh, I don't want to. Nobody wants to, George. We're all upset at work. Get out of bed.
Well, it kind of comes down to like fighting, right? As soon as a fighter says, I don't know, I think I might retire after this next fight. It's like, oh, well, that guy's going to lose. He doesn't have that drive to do it. He's going to get beat up. There's no, that's his only option at this point. Once you throw in the towel, either creatively or physically or whatever, once you give up that driving force, then you're just going to make really bad stuff. You're going to phone it in and it's going to be not received well.
But the opposite is actually true, because George Lucas made a passion project called Howard the Duck, considered one of the top 10 worst movies of all time after he made Star Wars 1, as opposed to, New Hope, Star Wars 4, as opposed to Star Wars 4, where he had a heart attack and it ended up being a great movie. So all I'm saying is we need to work these men to death. This is what this money is for. Why do we have Hollywood and all this money if the point is not to work old men to death for our entertainment?
I would say, I think directors get worse a lot of times. I think Kubrick.
I'm not saying they aren't, but I want to see the distorted version of them as they get older. It's not fun to see someone else take over the reins.
Kind of like a Picasso painting of a movie.
Yes, but in the end of his life, he just ends up painting normal stuff. I want to see. I don't want to see what J.J. Abrams thinks of his vision. The point is that he's made it. George, do whatever you want with this series. I want to see them push the old man out of the bed. I don't.
Would you rather see him make more Star Wars or make something new?
I would say whatever money it takes to make George Lucas make Star Wars, That's the money that should be spent. I don't want to, if you want to make Star Wars, I think you should force George Lucas to make it. I don't know why. I don't know. It is a bit like Kevin Smith saying, well, I've passed Clerks on to a younger man. It's like, what? You obviously can't do that. It makes more sense because Clerks has not been Hollywoodized and bought over by other people. But George Lucas, who was against that stuff, has let that happen. I say, as Star Wars fans, we all need to stand up and say, George, stop. He can't make like 10 minutes of a film. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's so lazy. He's not done anything. He didn't do anything. He's so lazy. It's not even like I'm saying, hey, George, do the whole thing. I'm saying, George, do anything. And he's still so lazy. He's like, no, JJ will do it. I'm an old man of 65. I'm too old to do it. Shut up. It's ridiculous. They're pushing Toriyama out, who's not a young man, and we're still making whatchamacallit, Studio Ghibli movies. We're forcing that old guy. We're kicking him into an animation booth. Get out of your bed, George, and do it.
I don't know. Stay in your bed, George. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's gonna be fine either way. It's gonna be. You're still a meek little man. You're not gonna get to make the movie you want, so it doesn't matter. So,
yeah,
I felt this.
Go ahead.
No, I felt as though the action was that the planes felt more like paper wood planes. That's really the only real good criticism I give of the new movies. George Lucas wanted it to be a World War I movie, which everyone forgets. They always say it's the Nazis. It's not the Nazis. It's World War I Germans. But the planes in Force Awakens felt like biplanes. They felt wood. They felt light. They felt more fragile.
Mm.
That's my only good criticism of the movie.
Yeah. I'm honestly not the biggest Star Wars fan. I never really cared.
I am the biggest.
Yeah.
I was so certain that I would get my I'm still waiting for my X-Men powers. I was mostly about X-Men movies, which people forget. That was the alternate option. It was either Harry Potter, Star Wars, or X-Men, and X-Men was the choice for a lot of young people. I'm still certain to get my X-Men powers.
I was all about the X-Men animated series growing up. That was my favorite.
Oh yeah, Evolution, where they were at the high school. And they went to both Xavier's Academy and a high school. Awesome. What a great twist on it. That Xavier was their tutor. Ah, such an awesome idea.
Yeah. Did you like Logan?
I mean, I am all about X-Men. It's really hard for me to be against X-Men. That series, Old Man Logan, was a comic book that meant a lot to me, and yeah, I cannot get enough of those old series. That was like, that Xavier and all those things, that was very important to a generation. It was the counter to Harry Potter. You either wanted to go to Hogwarts or you wanted to go, people forget that at the time, that people our age, it was really important to us. Those X-Men movies were a big, big deal. Another sort of forgotten thing.
Yeah. Yeah, Logan, I loved Logan. It just felt important in a way, which you don't really have with other superhero movies.
It felt meaningful, the ending.
Yeah.
It felt actual ending I cared about.
Yeah.
Although if you'd seen Shane, the ending of the movie gets ruined. I also really liked Stephen Merchant in it because I like seeing nerdy people get their due, and I like seeing Stephen Merchant, who is the advocate of nerds and, wrote The Office and wrote Hello Ladies and all these amazing things. It was great to see him in an important role in what felt like an important movie in the sci-fi canon.
Yeah, and he's not someone you would think to choose for that role. He's
not something that the mainstream would think, but any really nerdy person, a room full of nerds saying like, well, who's someone we all respect that we can give a cameo to? It's like, I think a lot of nerds would be like, Stephen Merchant.
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. In the mainstream, I think, we talked about Chris Pratt for a little bit, and it's for me, so sad to see all the movies that he's getting thrown into, because it's like too much. His Chris Prattiness is, getting obnoxious now, being in Jurassic World and Guardians of the Galaxy and,
man, I could talk about 6 hours about how Jurassic World's the worst movie ever made.
It's up there. It is awful. It is not a good one at all.
But I guess we should do, what happens if you see 2001 come on? Do you
I'll probably change the channel, to be honest.
really?
I have like no interest into watching this movie. I don't know why. I've heard about it.
Are you a big reader?
A little bit. I'm not a huge reader. I got an astigmatism that I didn't know about until I was about 24. So reading
That's rough.
was always hard, but I enjoy stories, so I listen to a lot of audiobooks and stuff like that.
Get it on audiobook because the story of the book, I actually do think Stanley Kubrick made a really great book and a fun visual guide to go with it, as opposed to what is generally considered to be this groundbreaking film and then nobody remembers the book. The book is really phenomenal and is a great view on sci-fi. So an audiobook version might be perfect for you. It's very cool.
Yeah.
I would keep on. It's a big event in my life. One of those movies I keep close to me and watch often.
Yeah. Why don't you tell me about your podcast again?
Let's Start a Cult Podcast, anti-groupthink. Something like the prequels are good. Is that a groupthink for you? Yes, it is, because people generally don't, they just think that and they say it. Batman has superpowers. These are all things that are of the groupthink that maybe you should break out of. Everyone should think for themselves. We started as criticizing social media on our podcast, which was something where, there's this huge hive mind to it, and we're trying to break out of that. But more importantly, if you're a podcaster listening to this, download Soundbite, SOUNDBYTE, and we are doing a series during that. They believe in creativity. They're partnering with us to do this, and it's an app. Be an early adapter. This app is for the small podcaster, and it's for all of us to use to create amazing things in 14 seconds as opposed to horrible things over 3 hours. Rogue One is way too long. Make it a 14-second movie. They tried to spy on the ship and then there was a Verizon install. That's the 14-second version of it.
I'd be okay with that Darth Vader hallway scene.
Yeah, it's a Darth Vader hallway scene, and then there's some technical difficulties downloading something from the Verizon cable guy. And then that's that's what that movie's about. Go back and watch Rogue One. It is about a bad cable installation. But yeah, you can check us out. Let's Start a Cult Podcast on iTunes or, Let's Start a Cult Podcast, the user on Soundbite.
And if you want to get a hold of us, you can get us at I Seen That Pod on Twitter, or me directly at AlanRJR. And then Taylor, who's not here today because he's lazy. At Taylor Enixon. How would you guess to spell Enixon?
That's a hard one. Enix, can I get the country of origin?
I have no idea. He's an American.
Okay.
I think.
Here we go. Enixon. I'm going to say INQUIXON.
ENOKSON.
It's not even close.
Nope. That's all right. No one gets it. Don't worry.
I made but no one gets it, but I made every wrong choice at every wrong turn. Yeah, no one, maybe necessarily no one gets through the maze, but no one gets stuck in the same corner the way I just did.